You know, I love this event, and I wish I could see all of your faces behind those masks, because I'd be able to recognize who you are. But and Rich are so glad that you're here tonight, because you're going to hear, I think, a great story about an iconic business in Greater Cincinnati. So Rich, let's get started.
All right.
I know some of the history has been shown on the screen of the company, and Robin mentioned a little bit, but can you share anything new about what the history of this great organization has been?
Well, there's not much new about history, so we'll maybe just go back to a little bit about Regina. I'd really like to talk about her. That's my great-grandmother.
Wow,
so
good.
Louis Charles is the founder, and everyone gives a lot of credit to the guy who started it. And when you think about ice cream in 1870, what do we take for granted today that they didn't have in 1870? Refrigeration.
Yeah.
Pretty critical to ice cream. So he was, I think, quite a character. I think he started it like he was 18, so a young entrepreneur in Cincinnati. But I really give credit to why we're here today to my great-grandmother, Regina, who took over on his death in 1919. And that's another thing that was different about 1919 versus 100 years later, is women didn't run businesses, especially gritty, grubby ice cream businesses.
Yeah,
and,
that's very true.
She ran it, when she took it over, it had one store. And in 50 years, her husband only had one store. And when she died in 1955, I think we had about 20 stores. So she was the real entrepreneur.
Wow.
In an era when women entrepreneurs were the exception.
Yes. Well, it's really amazing, because you're absolutely right. In today's world, women are taking more and more leads in starting businesses and running businesses. And I'm a strong advocate of that, because I got 3 daughters, 2 sons, so I want to see them succeed in the world of business if they choose to go that direction.
Me as well, I have one of each, so.
Yeah. So a new management team, along with you, took over the business a number of years ago. Share a little bit about who they are and what their respective roles are in the company.
I'm the part of the 4th generation, and my 2 cousins, Chip and Bob, and I took over from our fathers and aunt in 2004. And I'm the youngest. Maybe that's why I got to be CEO. I think maybe it's I have a business degree from Miami and from UC, a law degree, so
right.
Definitely always, and really that was the intent behind my education, was to prepare me to lead, take a leadership role. My cousin Chip, I think he's the hardest working of the 3 of us, because he runs the retail enterprise, the retail brick and mortar stores. And when he took over, we only had 12. Well, now we have, I think, 56 stores in 9 cities and 5 states. And he oversees all of those operations, probably 1,000 employees.
Wow.
And then his older brother, Bob, works in the production side, sourcing the ingredients and overseeing the quality assurance package or programs at our company.
I always thought the name Chip was a great name for an ice cream enterprise individual. So is that his real name, or is that a nickname?
His real name is Louis Charles Graeter III.
Okay.
That's
so
why he prefers
make it
Chip.
easy, Chip. Yeah, okay. Understand. So what's been your real key, I think, in growing your business over the last, let's say, 10 years, since your generation and your relatives have taken over the ownership?
I think clarity of purpose, focusing on who we are, and
Okay.
that seems like, well, duh, you're ice cream. But when my cousins and I took over, we, in Cincinnati, we have a bakery business. We also make candy. We had franchises at that time. The stores in Dayton and Columbus and in Kentucky were all franchisees. And transitioning a business is a whole nother story, and let's focus just on the entrepreneurial side. But
sure.
We successfully transitioned after years of struggle in 2004. And the 3 of us are, okay, great, now what? What do we do now? And I think in that first 3 years, we opened a new store. and just kept things going. And the real secret, not secret, the pivotal part where we launched into what we are today is in 2007 is we got help. So we hired a consultant, and she brought in another consultant, and we had a couple-day powwow where we sat down to figure out, who are we? Well, ice cream. Do we want to franchise? No. Do we want to stay in business forever? Yes. So you're going to run a business that you sell very differently from a business you intend to keep forever. And we decided that's what we wanted, to keep the business going. We didn't want to franchise. We didn't want to sell out. And once we had that clarity of purpose, we set about building the brand again. And that really, we were in a factory that my great-grandmother bought in the Depression, 1934. I mean, that's the kind of woman she was. I mean, here's the Depression, world's falling around, caving in around you. She goes out and buys a factory and starts expanding. So we're still in that building. And so this is 2007, all those decades, and we had just about grown as much as we could. And these consultants helped us. One was a production operations specialist. And she focused on our operations so we could get more capacity out of what we had in place. And with excess capacity, then we could start selling that beyond Cincinnati. And it's just lucky for us. It's a little bit of almost luck. There's a lot of luck to successful entrepreneurship,
yes, there is.
To be honest. The number one retailer in the country happened to be down the road from our office, and their team loved Graeters, and that's Kroger, of course. And we went to Kroger's sales team. At the time, we were in 20 stores, 20 of their stores in Cincinnati. And we always told them that's all we can handle. But after we were able to make more ice cream, we started expanding to the rest of the stores in Cincinnati and to our first market outside of Cincinnati, which was in Denver, Colorado, in what's called King's Supers.
I've been in that store, and I found your product in that store.
And it succeeded, so we went to, I think, Texas, because the CEO of the Kroger's division in Texas, they all came through Cincinnati, but he lived here, grew up here, and he loved Graeters, and he wanted us there. And ultimately, then I think Atlanta, and then we had a new problem is we couldn't make enough ice cream. So this same two people that we were working with, the other one of them focused on building our team. So it was process, how are we able to make more ice cream out of our plant, and then the people, which is the other most important part of entrepreneur, of growing a brand, is knowing what you're going to do, but having the team to take you there. And that led to the new plant, which opened in 2010. And if you think about what was going on in 2008 and 9 when we're building it and breaking ground and spending millions of dollars, you had the Great Recession.
Major breakdown in the economy.
And,
yes.
Thinking of my great-grandmother Regina, who did the same thing in the Great Depression, I thought, wow, if she can do it in the Depression, we can do it in the recession. And the rest is kind of history. But we had this new plant that we could make, at the time, 1 million gallons of ice cream, while we were only selling maybe 350,000 gallons. So a lot of sleepless nights on how are we going to pay for this plant.
They've caught up with that now.
We have. The new plan is we're getting about 1.5 out of it now, but the new challenges we're kind of constrained again, which is a good problem to have.
Yeah, it is. Rich, I was interested in you saying that you decided to get out of the franchise business, which you had, I think, 50 stores that were franchisees spread
40
around.
Probably, but yeah,
40 or 50. What was your reasoning for wanting to do that as a form of growing?
I call franchising the F word. Just has more than 4 letters. Franchisees. Nobody's going to run your business like you're going to run your business. And franchising is, I'm not going to knock franchising. It works for some people, but franchising, I think, is really whatever the underlying business is. Franchising is a business, and it's selling the goods, fulfilling the whatever the product is that's being or service, but it's the act of franchising, the fees you generate, the royalties. That's a business in and of itself, and it's really a financial play. And that's for really smart people. In our family, we're just simple ice cream makers, and I think we realized that that wasn't who we are. And it's the same thing for when you bring outside investors in. Money's important, but sometimes when you bring outside capital in, again, it becomes a numbers game. Like, are you hitting these metrics? Are you ROI? Are you delivering ROI? And then there's that pressure always to feed the monster for ROI and money than there is being true to yourself. And we don't have any outside investors. My two cousins and I, we own it all. We finance a lot of it by keeping the money in the business, and we don't have to answer to anybody. If our stores, like we just built a new store in Kenwood that the dean mentioned, and that was probably a $3 million investment.
Yeah, it's an awesome store.
Nobody builds $3 million ice cream stores. We do, because I can wait and, I know I'll probably never see the payout, the ROI in my lifetime, but my next generation, my kids and my grandkids will. And we're enjoying stores that my father and uncle and aunt built 30 years ago. It's a long-term perspective.
So share with us a little bit too about what challenges that you have faced during the last year and a half during this pandemic, which has really impacted many, many businesses, as you well know. Hopefully not yours, but it has impacted a lot of individuals, entrepreneurs, and I think coming out of this, I think it's an incredible opportunity for entrepreneurs, because we're going through this great resignation period.
Yep.
And a lot of people are thinking, I don't want to work for somebody else. I want to start my own business. And I think that's awesome. So what were some of the challenges you faced in the last year and a half?
Well, when the first happened in March, I was afraid. It was fear. I mean, we had 56 brick and mortar stores, and we owned a number of the stores, but the majority of those stores, they're leased, so there's a landlord that expects a rent check. And all the 1,000 employees, I thought, my gosh, I might be the guy that turns the lights out, because we weren't sure if we'd even be allowed to operate. And so that first 6 weeks was pretty scary. I had no idea what would happen. And fortunately, we have a wonderful team of people, and you adapt. So we had happened to, I don't know if you guys are customers, you might have the loyalty app on your phone. That loyalty app we were putting in place so you could get ice cream delivered to your house, like call and have somebody deliver, like the Uber Eats thing. Well, that had another feature for curbside delivery and an ordering online, so you could come and we'd bring the ice cream out to you, but we never planned to do that. We figured if you're going to come on in. Well, we had this technology ready to go for the Uber Eats part of it. We were able to flip on the curbside part, so it's almost like touchless delivery. You can order and pay for it outside, get it at the door, and not come in. And that was, again, a little bit of dumb luck. We had that ready, but we quickly adapted it. And ice cream is pretty much we have stores where you come in and sit down. When we had to close those rooms, and we provided masks to all of our employees, I should call them team members, before that was a mandate. While the government is still saying, masks might not work, I found 1,000 masks from another local family business who were able to sew them. Fabulous Furs in Covington. Guy Van Ruin,
Sure.
A good friend of mine. I'm like, Guy, I need masks. And I think 1,500 masks in a week he produced for us. And we provided them free of charge to all of our team members. And we adapted. And the other part is we have our pints in Kroger. Well, the Kroger business went through the roof. So we had some stores, like the Fountain Square store downtown. We had just opened it after 6-month remodel. That went to like zero.
Oh, wow.
Other stores, we had we had stores with drive-throughs, but it had never really been our focus, because we want you to come inside for the experience. Well, those drive-through stores were, they were 150% of typical. and other stores were in between. But the Kroger store, our grocery store sales were up like 35% because people were filling their freezers. And even more than that, so you had supply chain issues. So if you went into Kroger, and if you remember back March, April a year ago, you'd see empty shelves. And our guys in Cincinnati, we stock the shelves in Cincinnati. Our guys, our team puts that ice cream on the shelf, and their new mission was make sure those shelves are full. And Kroger wanted the shelf. An empty shelf is losing money for Kroger, so we took as much real estate as we could because we wanted when people came into Kroger and you see empty shelves, again, you get the fear. Oh my God, what's going on? It's Kroger, and shelves are empty. But then you turn the corner and you see a wall of Graeter's ice cream. I like to think that people knew that, okay, it's going to be all right. We're going to get through this because there's my hometown ice cream on the shelf.
Well, Rich, I wanted to ask you one last question because I know the family and the business is involved in the community in a lot of different ways. You want to share maybe a little bit about how your community involvement is important to the family and the business?
Oh, I think our favorite community involvement is, the Dean mentioned it, Elena's Blueberry Pie. That is an ice cream flavor that came out of a collaboration with the Cure Starts Now Foundation, which was started locally by Keith and I forget his wife's name, Deserick, and Brooke, thank you. My goodness, it's been a few years since I saw him. They had a daughter who had, I think it's called DIPG, it's pediatric brain cancer. It only attacks children, usually young children, and it is always fatal, and it is awful. And this couple lived across the street from my cousin Chip, and they lost their daughter Elena, and started a foundation. They started had a dinner, and at that dinner we, charity dinners, we donated a Graeter's experience, and out of that was to come up with your own flavor of ice cream, and we'd sell it for a week and donate the proceeds to the foundation. And that's how Elena's Blueberry Pie came about, and it actually, obviously it's still around, and that was years ago, so it had a lot more life than just 1 week.
Wow.
And we still, I think this year we crossed the $2 million milestone for raising funds for the Cure Starts Now Foundation. So
wow.
It's the most heartbreaking, but it's, for me, the most rewarding thing that we have been able to do. This little ice cream company working with this incredible family and foundation to raise $2 million to beat this awful cancer. And part of it is, if we could unlock this particular cancer, I don't understand the science behind it, but in theory would help unlock a key to curing all cancers. So
wow,
it's
that would be awesome. Yeah. Well, I wish we had more time because Rich has been wonderful, and I appreciate your taking the time this evening to be with us. Thank you so much, Rich, for being here with us. Thank you, man. It was awesome.